How much does an English teacher make 2020 here in China? So today I'm with my buddy Simon, and Jesus, we're dark in this picture. Anyways, today we're gonna tell you about how it is to work as an English teacher here in China, because that's a really hot job for a lot of foreigners here, and we have the expert here and a very rookie. I've actually worked as an English teacher 10 years ago, that's how old I am. But first, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. G'day, my name is Simon. I am a teacher by trade who currently the head of my department for ICT, music, art and PE at the school I work at.
可以啊，
可以。
来，我帮你拍了。啊，这样拍。要这样拍。
Famous. So Simon, tell me, where do you find an English teaching job?
Good question. This is probably the thing I dislike the most about working as a teacher in China, is that recruiters have a bit of a monopoly on all the jobs. If you go straight to a school like you might do so in other countries, or certainly in New Zealand, you'll largely get ignored. At least in my experience, you get ignored. So basically it's all through who you know. You find a recruiter with good contacts, then that's a pretty easy road for you to a good teaching job. I would highly recommend for people with not much contacts or money or background or experience to go through teachingnomad.com.
Teachingnomad.com.
Yeah.
And there's another website, hiredchina.com.
Right.
That's pretty good way, but they also have a lot of other jobs. They don't only have like English teaching job. Another thing I wanted to add also to that, it's very easy, it's very much easier to get a job when you're here compared to back home, because when you get here you start to know people, you meet all the recruiters, everything like that, so it's way more simpler to get a job here. So if you're thinking about becoming an English teacher and you're sitting back home, travel here for 1, 2, 3 months, try to like scout around for jobs here, then you will definitely find something at least.
Definitely.
So another question that a lot of people have is, how much do an English major
how much does?
How much does an English teacher make 2020 here in China?
Yeah, so there's a lot of variables, but if you're coming in with a bachelor in an unrelated field and you get into one of the better training centers like Disney English over EF, then you can expect to come in at around about 15 to 16ish, and then that actually serves as a pretty good base operation, because from there you can move to a kindergarten job or to a private school job and bump up from 20 to 25 depending on how long you're at the training centers. And then again from there you can get your certifications and licenses, which will push you into an international school where you'll be getting 30 to 35 plus housing and medical insurance and benefits. So you know, it starts pretty comfortably. 15 to 16 isn't bad, especially if you're young and single. And if you decide to take it seriously and want to develop your career in that regard, sky's the limit.
And also one question that I have is, does English teacher here in Shanghai make more than the one in like smaller cities?
Yeah. Do English teachers here? Yeah, they tend to. They tend to, because the cost of living is a little bit higher. Having said that, often the packages you'll get in a tier 2 city, I wouldn't necessarily say tier 3, but in a tier 2 city for sure, the packages tend to overcompensate for that drop in living. So you tend to be able to do a lot more, even though you might not be earning as much as you can in Shanghai.
Yeah, I would need an English teacher because my English is terrible. Anyways, next question. I would guess it's a little bit different job than you're an English teacher back home in Sweden or something like that. Can you talk a little bit about that? Like, what is your role as an English teacher here in China?
So the major difference is that in China, you're not necessarily teaching a language class like it would be where we come from, or like Chinese is to them. You're teaching an ESL class. So at least at the lower levels, definitely it's a lot more focused on structure and vocabulary and grammar and things to that effect, rather than, you know, getting nitty-gritty into Shakespearean dramas and things to that effect.
Yeah. And also, I don't know if you have experienced that, but the unserious teaching job that I had like 10 years ago, it was a lot more about like playing with the kids, singing songs, like doing a lot of that fun stuff. Is that also, I mean, you're on a totally different level than I am, but is that does become part of the job?
You know, absolutely, and it serves a purpose too, and it does achieves that purpose really well, and that is foundational level stuff and making foundation language acquisition enjoyable for people, which is important here because these kids, my grade 1s have 8-hour days and then go home and do homework. That's insane.
Exactly, yeah. So another question a lot of people have is, do you have to have some experience when you're working as an English teacher?
Yeah, the short answer is no. A bachelor degree in any subject area is fine. Obviously experience helps and will help you get a better job, but you can come with nothing and get a job at least the training center teaching English somewhere for pretty reasonable pay.
What I wanted to add to that is, like, I'm a non-native speaker, I'm a Swedish guy, even though I've worked as an English teacher. Before it was way easier to do that, but now they're really harsh on like non-native speakers, unless you really have a degree in teaching. Yeah. What's the best thing and what's the worst thing about being an English teacher here in China?
I love specifically the relationships I develop with my students here. I feel like is on a very different level to back home because they have much less concerns about your interaction with the students. In New Zealand and South Africa, if you know a child, if your student comes up and hugs you, that's kind of like a thing you distance yourself from. But here, the parents are happy to see you having a physically intimate. That sounds weird.
Sounds terrible.
It sounds weird, especially as with the perspective we come from. But it's not weird to them, and that's the point. Like, you know, it's for them. A teacher hugging their student there's nothing wrong with it, and it, you know. Not that I just go around hugging kids all day. That's not the point. The point is the physical contact you share with the students is not an issue here, and that typically leads to closer relationships with your homeroom and things of that effect. Yeah. That's for me is something I really enjoy, is having those tight relationships. I don't just know the students, I know their parents, I know their brothers and sisters, the grandma and the grandma and grandpa who come and pick them up. Like you really do feel like you're part of the family here.
Before we continue with today's video, I just wanted to make a shout out to Where Winds Takes Me's YouTube channel, because she commented on my video last time. If you want to be featured on my video, please comment below, subscribe and give it a thumbs up, and maybe you will be the lucky one. Now back to the video. And the worst thing?
Worst thing, probably balancing local curriculum with international curriculum. There's sometimes some of the requirements of you as far as your teaching content can seem unreasonable.
Lastly, if someone sitting back home in Europe or the States or wherever, and they're thinking about coming to China and working as an English teacher, what would you recommend them to do?
Sure, so I would recommend, if you have no teaching experience or license or background in education, look for a training center job. Stay there for a year to 6 months, get some experience behind you, get if they offer certifications and whatnot, go for them, and then start looking for other jobs after that. Because if you want to, look, training centers jobs are great if you just want to come and enjoy China, enjoy overseas. But if you want to actually develop a career out of it and you don't have the required background, training center jobs are a very good foot in the door for you to develop and, you know, take this to a much further extent and actually become a quality teacher in the long run with a good career.
Yeah. And also, lastly, I wanted to say that right now, because a lot of foreigners went outside because of the coronavirus, right now there's a lot of jobs out for English teacher. Of course, it's really difficult because you can't get in and stuff like that. But I just wanted to mention that right now is a really good time to actually apply for jobs, because people are looking for English teachers all over China. So if you really want to do that, like, apply now, get a job, and then move here when you actually can travel here.
Yeah, for sure. Market's hot at the moment. Lots of big international schools are starting to lower standards temporarily just to get the positions filled. So it's a good opportunity to upscale.
So thank you very much for that. Simon also have a YouTube channel.
Simon has a YouTube channel.
So let's just quit.